Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So here's my review and breakdown of the very last episode. A really great episode, honestly, a really solid finale. I think this episode actually fixed a lot of issues that I had with the show, at least all season, which I'm really happy about, and I'll talk about that more in my breakdown here. But yeah, really great episode here. Also, I do apologize for not posting this review until now. I just wasn't feeling that great all day, and so I couldn't really, do a bunch of videos, and so I'm going to do this one tonight, and then I'll do a bunch of videos tomorrow on season 3 and a lot of stuff that happened in the finale here, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes out tonight. There's going to be a lot of talk about season 3. I've seen online actually that there's supposed to be some sort of like 2-part event happening tonight with the finale airing. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but if there is something more to that, I'll talk about that obviously tomorrow. Unless they announce something really crazy tonight, then I'll do a video tonight. But yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about for the next week or so. So yeah, definitely make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. But let's break down the very last episode here of season 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. So we actually see Daryl, he finds this guitar, and then he goes to see Laurent, and I thought the episode starting off like that was kind of cool, just because it's just like this cool, interesting moment that happens here where at some point Daryl just found this guitar and then just like gives it to Laurent. And so I like that because, again, I sort of mentioned that beforehand, like when Daryl gets his guitar, I hope it's just somewhere nearby where he doesn't go to the city and there's some other storyline where they're traveling so much, because I don't like that aspect to it in terms of pacing and all of that. It's just not a lot of fun for me personally, because I like it to be very realistic, or at least as realistic as possible, right? In terms of just some of the world, I guess, rules that you've sort of created or have shown us over the years. And so I compare a lot of this in terms of pacing to The Walking Dead, which obviously the pacing was very slow there. And so when I look at this show, even though the pacing is a lot quicker, I'm okay with it sometimes, but there just needs to be, or it needs to feel like there's an element of, yeah, that could have happened. And so, yeah, Daryl just finding this guitar somewhere there, not going to another city or traveling here and there just randomly in the episode. I really like that. And Laurent plays the guitar actually, and then Daryl sings. And so we actually got the scene where Norman Reedus was singing. And so it was really emotional, definitely. And I really did love the scene. And I think that Norman Reedus, I mean, the fact that they never really wanted to keep the scene in, it was more, I guess for Daryl anyways. Like, I thought it would be more emotional for Laurent, but it actually ended up being a lot more emotional for Daryl. And so I thought originally that, Laurent singing the song was more of a goodbye to Daryl, but no, he was just sort of singing it because it was like, he just liked that song and he was just sort of playing the song. And so Daryl, I think that no matter what, that scene was always supposed to be more about Daryl, that Daryl would look more at Laurent and be like, wow, like, I'm so proud of him. And, he's singing this song. And so he knows that song. He's getting very emotional. Again, there's like a father-son dynamic there. And I thought the scene in terms of Daryl anyways, I thought like, oh man, the singing honestly for Daryl, because you can see Norman Reedus actually getting a little sad, like he kind of starts to get a little emotional. So really cool. Ash actually at this point is still very upset about everything. And they honestly still sort of ended the story there. And I was really happy about that. I thought that at some point Ash and Carol would just sort of talk it all out. But no, I mean, they sort of talked about stuff, but Ash is still in that mindset where he is very upset about what Carol did. And so they left the story here. We'll see what happens with Laurent and Ash in the future, but I'm such a huge fan of that because it's just, that's so natural to the characters. Like, Ash is going to feel upset about that. He's not going to get over something like that quick. So just leaving it there like that, so in the future, maybe something like that comes back up where they talk about it. Then Ash maybe says, you know what, like, I forgive you. Maybe it takes a little bit. Like, it's just, you want these storylines to sort of continue like after a couple of seasons. And so maybe Ash and Laurent don't return until season 4. Maybe they come back with the Commonwealth or the CRM. But yeah, I really like the fact that they actually did that. We did see Falou and Caudron. They got caught by Pouvoir or the Nest. And eventually they do get away from them and they end up with Daryl and Carol at some point. And then Laurent and Carol actually do talk, and he says people shouldn't lie, but in general, I'm thankful that you did because now you're here, and, I guess what has happened has happened. And yeah, I mean, honestly, the way that he sort of looks at things overall, like, I think it's the way he sort of explains it. Like, he explains things really well where it just makes sense to a lot of people, and it just makes a problem seem like it's not that much of a problem. Like, I think, some of the characters on the show, like Carol and Daryl and some of the other characters, could overcomplicate something that is very, very, easy to sort of maybe get through. And so, Laurent just being like, well, people shouldn't lie, but, it did cause a lot of good things. And so overall, I think it was a good thing. And just keeping it that simple, I think for Carol can be like, yeah, you know what, I did do that. But in the end, I think a lot of people are in a good place now. And, like Carol did sort of save everybody. So if she wasn't there, Daryl might not be here right now. So, and also on Daryl, he actually goes and talks with Ash, and he kind of gets really upset with Daryl. And again, he's just sort of mad in general. And that's really where they leave Ash's storyline for the season, is that he's just kind of there. Like, he's upset about everything here, but I think he just feels like, all right, well, I'm going to take Laurent back to the Commonwealth, or not back to the Commonwealth because he's never been there, but he's going to take him to the Commonwealth, and then we'll see where it goes at that point. But Ash just wants to get back home. Obviously, he's very upset with Carol and whatnot. And so, I really like the fact that, again, like I said this already, but I just think that, in terms of for that character and future storylines, it's very honest. And I do wonder when we're going to see them again. Anne gets captured by Pouvoir or the Nest. And so they're all trying to find Daryl and Laurent. And you have all of these other storylines basically, coming together at one point here. And so that I really liked. In terms of the pacing for the whole episode, it really was split into like two separate storylines, right? Where the first half was all about getting Laurent, I guess, to leave, right? To be able to have him on his way to the Commonwealth. And then the second half was them going to London, which I found very, very off. Like, what? They're going to London? I thought they're supposed to go to Spain. So I think something is eventually going to happen that causes them to go to Spain. I know they're not filming in Spain and just like pretending it's London. Maybe there's some aspect to that, but like they're going to be in Spain. Like, they're talking about filming there. They've shown us a lot of behind the scenes stuff from season 3. So obviously they are going to Spain, right? Carol gives Daryl his crossbow. I thought that was really cool, but I did talk about that the other day. Anne is obviously showing them how to, get to the plane. And so we do see burners again. We haven't seen them in quite some time. So that was really cool. And it really does come to a point here in the story where they all just got to leave. Like, they all got to get out of here. It's getting very, very dangerous for everybody here. And so they have to get the plane out of that garage. And so I like the fact that they actually tore down that wall so fast. Like, I will say, in terms of how they hid the plane, I wish they did it a little bit better. Like, this is definitely, like, I'm focusing on something very, very small, a very small detail here that doesn't really need to be criticized, but to actually believe that Ash built up that whole wall like that in just like, what, one day or whatever. And it's not even necessarily like you couldn't do that. But first of all, it's by himself, which maybe he could do, but it's just the fact that he got all the materials that fast. And then at the very end here, they took down that wall really quick. And I was looking at where all the wall pieces were, and they were pretty far away from the garage to be able to pull the plane out of there. So I just think that could have been done a little bit better, but it is what it is. They all gotta obviously leave here now. And so Laurent and Ash get on the plane and they're starting to drive away. And so, at this point here, Carol's feeling very emotional and she looks at Daryl. And I really like this here because Daryl says something like, I know. And it just really shows the connection that these two characters have. And Carol at this point was just going to leave. And I think she couldn't. Like, they were actually leaving, and yes, they were going back to the Commonwealth, but Carol came here for Daryl. Like, Carol wasn't going to go. Like, there was no way she was going to go. And so, yes, it was obvious when all the next scenes were happening that Carol wasn't on the plane, but I was okay with that because it was really cool, like, just in general, the scenes, right? Like, you actually had this Pouvoir soldier on this motorcycle driving up to the plane, and so Daryl takes out that soldier, and then you have a vehicle driving up, from the other side, and then Daryl's having a hard time taking out that vehicle, and so Carol's there. It was just a really cool scene. Honestly, in terms of the action and all of that happened here just during the sequence, really well done. It really reminded me of like Medal of Honor in terms of like the sound effects, or I guess sound design for like, every single shot that happened or anything, just sort of like reloading or like everything in the scene. Like, honestly, it sounded so amazing. The music as well. Like, I was a really big fan of, again, just the sound design of the scene and just sort of the build to having, the reveal of the seat was actually empty. Like, it wasn't something where, obviously we all sort of knew Carol wasn't going to be there, but I think showing the seat first and having that the reveal that Carol's not there, that she's outside, like, that was honestly a really cool way to do it, just because it really played into how obvious it was that she did do that, because you can sort of notice a few scenes before that she wasn't there. And so, yeah, I really liked all of that. Honestly, really incredible. And Laurent leaving, once the plane took off, it was just like, wow, like, this storyline is over. He is now safe from Pouvoir and the Nest, and that basically ends, that storyline completely. Like, everyone's gone at this point. The music, everything, just honestly incredible. Just a really amazing way to end this arc here. And Daryl and Carol are so happy. Daryl was so happy to see Carol there. And so now they're going to London, and that was something that I was honestly really surprised about. It just kind of came out of nowhere. I never really heard them plan anything out like that. It was just, all right, we're going to go to London now. And so, you know, in terms of how that affects season 3, we'll have to wait and see, but we know they're going to Spain. So I'm assuming they're trying to get to London. Something will happen when they're on their way there that will cause them to end up in Spain. So yeah, in terms of the other storylines, we'll talk about it in a second, but there's a lot of stuff from season 2 that can still carry over to season 3, which I'm really, really happy about. But yeah, we have some downtime here for a bit, and we actually have a campfire. You know, they're all talking about a bunch of stuff. Codron and Daryl talk about like their brothers and whatnot. I mean, Daryl doesn't really reference Merle, but we all know that Daryl did lose his brother, and you know, he had to see him as a walker and stuff. So Codron mentioning certain things like that, like we all knew what Daryl was likely focusing on, you know, just in general, even though he sort of plays it like, you know, like, yeah, I can't imagine like what you're going through. He obviously has been through that. And so the reveal of, no, I never killed your brother, you know, someone else did it. Codron getting upset about that, even though I felt like all that was sort of unnecessary. You didn't really need to explain that. I mean, it was a really nice scene. And so Codron knowing that Daryl never actually did that, I think, yeah, honestly, I love Codron. I hope he's in season 3, and I think he will be in season 3. But yeah, we do see Carol. She actually does mention that they should be there by now, which when she said that, I was like, well, I guess so. It's been like hours and hours, right? Like you're flying straight there. And they mention that they are flying straight to America. They're not going to be stopping off in Greenland or anything like that. They're going straight to America. And there was a mention in terms of how that was possible in the episode. So I'm just going to assume, okay, like it makes sense. That's likely what's going to happen here. So she actually talks about the Commonwealth and talks about Laurent getting there and, you know, meeting Judith and etc. So that's really cool. Just to think that that's probably happening around this point. And then obviously Rick and Michonne are going to be there. And then just what happens around there. Like that's the thing. Like that's sort of the excitement for season 3 and 4 is like, where is that all going, right? But we do see Carol actually break down here. She says that she can't remember Sophia's face and she only really remembers her as a walker. Like she remembers basically the barn and that's it. And so, you know, I do feel so bad for her. Like I like where the episode ends, but that's a lot to live with. And she just felt, you know, so horrible about everyone dying. Like she was saying, you know, Henry and like everybody, like she was naming everyone. And so Daryl, you know, tries to make her feel better. And it's just like, we keep going. Like we keep going. And so a really amazing Daryl and Carol moment. I think moments like that is really what makes this show incredible. And it's insane to think that these two characters haven't really been together at all throughout the entire series. Like the last 3 episodes they have been, but like until episode 4, it just wasn't really a thing. And the last 3 episodes have been the strongest episodes. And so I'm really excited in terms of what that means for a season 3. But yeah, they're on their way to London though. It's the next morning. Falou decides to not go with them. And so he stays behind. I guess that might be the last that we see of Falou. We'll have to wait and see. He could show up in season 3 at some point, but the way the scene plays out, it almost seemed like it was a goodbye to Falou, and so it was sort of a happy ending for the character. You know, it was a really cool scene in general, and I think that if his story did end there, I think that would be really awesome, because a lot of character stories don't end in a happy way like that. You know, there's either like a death or, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? So for Falou to actually have this happy ending, we'll see. He could return in season 3, it's possible, but if this is how his story ends here, you know, I think that throughout the last 2 seasons, he was a really amazing character, and I'm really happy in terms of how much screen time he got for season 2, because in season 1, he wasn't really a main character, but in season 2, he was a really big part of the story, and so I think that, yeah, I mean, really amazing character, and I will say I really like the whole group aspect, like everybody all together traveling to this tunnel. I wish they were all together, like if you had Daryl, Carol, Laurent, Isabel, Ash, Falou, Codron. I'm trying to think of other characters. Like if you had all of them traveling to Spain or something, like we would have a new group, but we'll see where they go for season 3. I think that for sure we have Daryl, Carol, and Codron as well. I mean, they enter this tunnel here and the power goes on, and whatever is down there is causing them all to hallucinate, and we do see bioluminescent walkers. I do want to do a video breaking down, you know, what happened here in this tunnel, because it seems like there was a lot of old government stuff that was happening here, and there might have been like some testing and experiments happening, but it was very unrelated to the story overall, because they just had to sort of get through the tunnel. And so that's really what I expected. I talked about that beforehand. Like whatever was down there, we would see really cool stuff, and it would be like, oh, I wonder what that, tells us about just some of what was happening beforehand. And obviously that they weren't going to get into it, but we would see some stuff, and then we'd all just be wondering more about what it all meant. And so I'll do a video breaking down every single detail that we learned, and obviously some of the behind the scenes stuff that we learned tonight once the episode airs on cable. Throughout these hallucinations though, there was a lot of stuff that happened. We had Cadron versus Daryl again, that happened again, which is really cool. Carol follows Sophia, and then she also sees herself as a walker. That was incredible. And what we actually learned here is that walker was actually, like, the mask that they actually made was from a walker that they were going to make of Carol in season 4 of The Walking Dead. So they were actually going to kill off Carol in season 4. I know they've talked about that in the past where Carol wasn't supposed to make it this far, but I didn't know that they actually made like a walker mask of Carol. Like, that is so insane. They were pretty committed in terms of the story overall. And so to think that they literally changed the character from that point in season 4 to saving Rick and Daryl, at Terminus, and then also the Grove just beforehand. Like, that was such a crazy change in the character during that season. Like, honestly, the Grove really changed Carol, I think, overall. And so I wonder if, where Carol was supposed to die, if it was like just before that. Like, I really do wonder. Like, Carol eventually does see Sophia alive, which was, obviously really emotional. She actually, for the first time in a really long time, actually started to see Sophia as being alive and not the Sophia that was a walker, which, I think for a lot of us, it was a really emotional scene. Like, honestly, out of the whole episode, that was the one moment where I was like, okay, I'm starting to get really emotional now. And I think it was a really beautiful, very bittersweet moment where obviously Sophia is gone and you really felt that loss for Carol. But it was just amazing to see Carol's reaction to seeing Sophia alive. She was so upset, but so happy. Like, she got to actually see her daughter again, like the way that she always knew her and not the walker that came out of the barn, right? And I just think that in terms of that whole storyline, it was told really well. I think that for the season, in terms of all of this, it wasn't told the best. Like, I thought there would be a lot more focus on Carol, missing Sophia. It was sort of a background thing that was sort of mentioned here and there. And again, I think if there was 8 episodes or 10 episodes of this season, so many of the issues that I have with them rushing a lot of the story here in terms of this storyline, Pouvoir, Isabel's death, and all of that. Like, if this was extended another 2 or 4 episodes, they could have gotten into that a lot more in depth. In terms of this very last episode though, I really liked the way that all of this played out. So this could have been the finale still. Like, this could have been episode 8 or episode 10. It's just the stuff beforehand, they need to explore that a lot more. But in terms of Carol seeing Sophia again, just really incredible. Daryl is seeing Isabel. This was sort of a goodbye to Isabel as well. Daryl actually saw his grandfather as well. Really crazy. Like, honestly, so inspirational for Daryl as well. Because for Daryl's family, and I think that a lot of people forget about this, like, for Daryl, his father, I guess, wasn't really around too much. And so the reason why, though, is because his father actually died in the war. And that was sort of something that they talked about in season 1, was that caused a lot of trauma for their family because his grandfather died in the war. And so his son, lost his father. And then eventually, obviously, his son was Daryl. And he just wasn't able to, get through a lot of the stuff that he went through as a kid. And it really is one of those things where one thing like that happens can really mess up, future generations. And so for Daryl to see his grandfather in a moment like that of like, he really tried to go back home. And like, it was just a very inspirational, heroic moment. And so for Daryl to get back up, to not believe that this was the end, it was just like, again, very inspirational. And so, again, this episode, just all of this here was probably some of the best character stuff that I've ever really seen from any of the Walking Dead stuff in years. The episode ends with Carol and Daryl just walking through the tunnel, and that's pretty much it. They just walk into darkness, and so we'll see where they go for season 3. Cadron just ran off, so I think, at some point, if he does show up later on in season 3 or maybe a season 4, like, he is there somewhere. But if he does show up at some point, it is probably going to be pretty random. Well, not random, but we would need a backstory, I guess, sort of explaining all of it. So we'll have to wait and see what happened to Cadron. I'll do a video talking about Cadron in the future and sort of where that could go. Well, I'll do that video tomorrow specifically. So, I thought that this episode overall was honestly one of the best episodes of the season here. I think episode 4 was probably better, although it's so hard to say. Like, honestly, episode 4, so much happened, and it was a really insane episode, but I really enjoyed this episode a lot more because I think that in terms of the pacing of the whole episode, like, yes, it wasn't as insane as episode 4, but I think it was just told better and written better overall. So I almost do prefer episode 6 over episode 4. In terms of Norman Reedus saying it was like the best 1 hour of anything Walking Dead ever, Like, I get it in terms of some of the emotional stuff. It's definitely up there, you know, for Daryl and Carol's story. But I think overall, I mean, it's so hard to say. Like, honestly, I would have to look back at like some of the best episodes of The Walking Dead ever. It was a good episode, honestly. It was a really amazing episode, but I couldn't confidently say it was like the #1, like best episode ever of The Walking Dead. So yeah, but you know, obviously I really enjoyed the episode overall. So yeah, I'm going to do a bunch of videos breaking down, you know, all the individual moments that happened here in the episode, talk about some stuff from Season 3, also Dead City Season 2, so stay tuned for all my videos breaking down all of that. Make sure to be a subscriber if you want more Walking Dead content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.